We had a wonderful lunch. You whispered in my ear that it was soup. I don't know where the rest came from. It just... And that cake, was it good? Don't sneeze now. Okay, I thought when Richard said, bring something personal, I thought, I'm not Mark Finley or one of these people with such a lot of experience from all over the place and so forth. But I have had some experience in what is called the Adventist Volunteer Service. I was the Associate Secretary of the division, the Southern African Indian Ocean Division, and part of my work was to encourage volunteers and to facilitate the movement of volunteers from place to place. And then I thought to myself, well, we need to go further. We actually need to have teams, not individuals, but teams of volunteers going to help Maranatha Flights International build churches, because they had just begun a big church building operation in the country of Mozambique. And if you go and you promote something and you don't participate, then you are nothing short of being a hypocrite, right? So we decided that I would go once a year and take a group of volunteers, a team, and go and build churches. And we'll tell you about that today. And that once a year, we as a family would go and build a church, help build a church. What I'm showing you now is a summary of probably about 30-odd churches. Represents about 30-odd churches built over a period of 5 years. Okay? I'm not actually showing you the brick churches. I'm showing you the one-day churches. Okay? And this is something that you will not be familiar with. But it's a project that has been set in motion by the person in the United States of America, an Adventist, who runs the biggest, I think the biggest company, it's the biggest manufacturing company of cement mixers in the US. He's an Adventist. And he said there must be an easier way of building churches. And this is lovely when the synergy of the ministry and the layman come together, and the product is what you're going to see today. It is actually quite amazing. Not only one-day churches now, they make one-day schools, one-day classrooms. It's fascinating. Okay, so without any further ado, let me take you to one of my favorite countries, Mozambique. Okay, and here we go to Mozambique. Hey, come on. Mozambique, Southern Africa, the Portuguese. Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama, right? Okay. These fellows in their little caravels, I think you called them, sailing boats, sailing ships, came down this coast here on what is the coast of Namibia. That's what you're actually seeing there. Further up, it's the coast of Angola. But Namibia, they came round this horn of this. They came round the Cape of Good Hope, which is there, that little dot, that little triangle, and they passed around to Port Elizabeth, which is another triangle, past Durban, and up. And one of the places that they stopped at was Lorenzo Marx, and they put their crosses wherever they went and stopped. They put these crosses that they'd brought from Portugal, carved and ready to be placed at different places, signifying that this was for the king of Portugal. Okay, this was happening in the 16th century. Okay, in the 17th century, the Portuguese formally established. The Dutch actually established a base at that first triangle, and that was Kaap de Goeie Hoop, the Cape of Good Hope. Okay? So I'm going to talk to you about this. which is the mission trip to Mozambique, and this is Mozambique. This country that you see here, 1,188 miles long, okay? From the tip up there in Tanzania down to the tip here near Swaziland, right? It is a magnificent coastline. It is subtropical for the most part. It is one big beach. Mozambique is a big beach, stretching for kilometers inland and all the way up. The Zambezi River drains into Mozambique and has huge flood areas and deltas and so forth. And the sand here, inland, the soil is sand. And it's actually quite fertile. It's quite fertile. The seas are lovely, beautiful beaches, and all the rest of it. And there you can get an idea. Malawi, you see where Malawi is? And you know that the Chewa people are on both sides of the border, in Malawi and in Mozambique. And the reason for that is that some guys in Europe sat down and they drew a line on a map. They didn't bother who was living on the left, the east, the west. They just drew a line. And the Chewas on both sides, and the Chewas on that side belonged to Portugal. The Chewas on that side belonged to Britain. That's it. That's how Africa was actually balkanized, okay? And it has led to some problems, but amazingly far less than we've had here in the Balkan countries. So the area that I'm going to let you visit is that area indicated there, okay? Sorry, that is the river. That is the big river, the Zambezi River, okay? That comes down and comes out there. And this is the area where we started building churches. And that is the route that we would take from Johannesburg, South Africa, to Mozambique. And that red area is the area where we did our church building, okay? Now, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, maybe we should just ask the question, first of all, why did we go to Mozambique? Why did Maranatha go to Mozambique to build churches there? Well, the reason is that Mozambique, Portuguese-speaking country, was subjected to civil war from 1975 onwards. And then eventually, the situation became so grave for the Portuguese that they had to leave. And they left very quickly. They withdrew very quickly, and people who were living there, expatriates living there, had to just pack their cars and go. Close the doors of their houses and leave. And they fled to South Africa, many of them, and some to Portugal, some to Brazil, and so forth. But this is, all those years later, you can still see the bullet marks in the wall. The country was devastated, economically and so forth. And this is what many Adventists were using to worship. Worshipping under the trees. Now you can see the sand there. You know what happens when the wind blows? Sand in your eyes, sand in your mouth. The preacher's got to cover his mouth because the sand is flying around. And of course, many of the folks living in the area also either Roman Catholics or Muslims. Roman Catholic churches are big, well built, even in these areas. The Roman Catholics don't spare money when it comes to building churches. They are the mother church, and they want you to know they're the mother church, right? Muslims say that anybody who worships under a tree is a pagan. So how do you convert, how do you influence a Muslim when from the word go, you're a pagan, worshipping under a tree? So what had to happen was that we had to try and get Mozambique up to the place where our churches were representative. This is an Adventist church. You saw one under the trees. This is still under the trees. Can you see the pulpit cloth in the front there? That is a church, right? We are sitting having our lunch with our group in their church. Mozambique is a place that gets tropical cyclones. heavy rainstorms. You can just imagine what havoc that would play with any poor church trying to worship. And of course, the toilet. That is Mozambique church toilet. That is the toilet seat. Right? Now do you have some idea of the challenges being faced by these people in Mozambique? Poverty-stricken, many of them, because of the civil war, unable to build decent churches, having conditions like this. That's why Maranatha turned his attention to trying to build the work up in Mozambique. And they decided to do it by using one-day churches. A one-day church is like a Meccano set. Do you know what I mean when I say Meccano set? It's made of little pieces of steel that are bolted together, and you can create all sorts of things with it. The only difference is that these churches come in kits. You get exactly the right length, cut, bent, punctured, everything for a full church. All the churches are a standard size, standard length, standard height. Everything is standard, okay? All you need is to take this set of things that are dumped there by a truck and the metal sheets and create that. And we built one of these between about 9 o'clock in the morning and just after lunch. Put the roof on. That's how good our team eventually got at putting these churches up. There you can see that it's at the final stage where they put the last of the roofing sheets on. It is not an easy material to work with, because this is all made from a roll of flat steel that is very thin, about that wide, probably about that wide, which is bent on a special machine to create these channels. Now that flat steel becomes very strong when it's folded like that, okay? So let's take a closer look. They get a church like that given to them, okay? Right? And of course, you know, Seventh-day Adventists from America find it very difficult to think that there could possibly be a language like Portuguese somewhere. They think the whole world speaks Americanese. So you know what they were doing? With all due respect, they were sending these churches with Seventh-day Adventist Church on the name board instead of, what is it? Ecclesia do, what's it? Yeah, Ecclesia do Adventista do Septimo Dia, or something like that, right? Okay. Anyway, they rectified that problem. So do they ever finish these churches, or do they remain open? Okay. No, they finish them. Remember, these are poor rural people. These are not city dwellers. That's one of the churches, for instance. You can see Seventh-day Adventist Church stuck in there, but they were just too glad for it. That's what it looks like inside. They put in a pulpit area, just like we have here. And you know who the people are that do much of the finishing work? Women. The women. Making bricks. There they are. Making the bricks. It's actually wonderful to see what they prepared to do. Some of the churches are finished by using reeds and bamboo. And those churches are so cool. They're actually wonderful churches to worship under because of the actual materials that are being used. Right. So what about the country and its culture? All right. Now, this is what much of the countryside looks like in the area where we were working. Further to the north, there are forests. The Portuguese planted coconuts everywhere, close to the sea, and they planted, what's the other nut? It is the, what's the other nut? The curved nut? Cashew nuts. Cashews. Cashew nut tree. You'll see, we'll show you one of those trees. They're big. So here you are, we're on a road. Now, why do you think that road is built up like that? Because of annual flooding. You cannot pass on that road if it's the rainy season and the waters come up. So there we are. That's very typical of the south. Okay? And then, of course, the further you go, the more overgrown it becomes. It becomes like this. In some parts, you have to actually go by GPS. You're given a coordinate. You military guys would love this. You're given a coordinate, and it's got a name. Whatever the name is. And that is where you're going to build your church. There is no town on the map. There is a coordinate and a name. And you go, and on one occasion, I remember, we took a wrong turn, and we were actually going into a game park, because the game parks there don't have fences, right? We were going through the game park. All we knew is that we were going due north, and that if we went due north, at some point we would intersect with a regional road. And for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, we went on this winding little thing. The little car, was going its own way through the bush. There was no road. It was just this little thing, this little vehicle winding its way along, and we followed as many tracks as we could, and eventually we crisscrossed with this big road. And that's the way you find your way around there. And when you get to that place, the coordinates, you have to ask the people whose property it is, and can they show us where the church has to be built? And then you have a special set of actual ropes that cannot stretch with rings on them, and you use those to pin your whole structure out, peg it out. It must be an absolute diagonal. You've got the square that you eventually sit with, or rectangle, and that's how you put it together. We had to equip ourselves with 4x4s. That gives you some idea of, just in a field that's been cultivated, the depth of the sand. Okay? And there I am driving through there to the place where this, and you see the coconuts all over the place. That fellow's got some standing there at the roadside, one of our team. He's already got a few. There you are. The one thing you have to be very careful of in Mozambique, one thing, is pitching your tent anywhere near coconut trees. If you've ever lain awake at night and heard the gentle dripping of the rain on your tent, and then all of a sudden, thud, right next to you, and there's a coconut. I'm telling you, people are killed every year in Mozambique by falling coconuts. So, yeah, there you are. And of course, water is a major, major challenge in Mozambique. Not that there's no water, it's that the water sources are largely contaminated. Because people use pit toilets and there is a high water table, what happens is, it isn't long before you're actually in the water. And then, of course, the movement of excrement and so forth starts to be along the water below the surface, and before you know it, where you dug your well, you're actually taking out things that you don't want to. So the ladies have to walk very far to get water. This is a typical house in these villages. They say you can see the difference between a Seventh-day Adventist village and a non-Adventist village. And you know what the difference is? Spotlessly clean. And none of these. Pigs make a mess. This is the local market in Shai. Such a colourful place to visit. Such a colourful place to visit. And this is Kentucky Fried Chicken. You have to cook it yourself. Pluck it yourself. Okay. And of course, if you want anything to wear, ladies, you get yourself a lovely wrap, which is typical to that particular part of the world. And there's one of our folks having bought a wrap. Okay. And of course, if you want something a little stronger than your chicken, your kuku, you get yourself a goat. And goats travel in the most comfortable place, right on top, where the wind blows free, and these goats are all over the place. I was coming through Mozambique, up near Malawi, and unfortunately one of these kids came out in the street and offered himself as a living sacrifice. It was quite sad, but you're told if you hit one of them, you just keep riding. Because the owner's got the goat, and I've done him the favor of killing it, and if I stop there, he will have the goat, it will be dead, and he'll also have me paying him for the goat, and you will not get away, and you will have all sorts of trouble, and they'll call the police, and you won't get away till the next day. So what happens is that people basically, unless someone is waving a thing in his hand and saying, that's my goat, I've got the birth certificate, you basically just move on. Gets hot up there. But then we also had our moments when we had to travel on top of the Land Rover. That's part of our team, going down for a swim one day. What are the locals like? Well, the locals are like the locals here. People are people, aren't they? And actually, the Mozambican children are just a dream. They are lovely. Absolutely. This old lady was 70, and that fellow from our team was 70. And when they found out they were the same age, they were like brother and sister. It was quite sweet to watch. These are Adventists. Camp life, that is one of those nut trees. Huge, isn't it? Huge. And those are our camps. You can see the church over to the left, and that's our camp in the morning. There, you can see it's just sand everywhere. Sand everywhere. This is our kitchen. Our campfire is where those stools are. Okay. Those tents are the shower tents. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. You just zip yourself in there with a bucket full of water, and you chat to the person next door while you're having a good soap. And when you finish soaping yourself, you just rinse it off, dry yourself off, and so forth. And then, of course, at the end of the day or whenever it's time, we've dug a latrine. See the soft sand? We've dug the latrine down the right distance, okay? And we have buckets put out and special portable toilets, and there are the toilet tents. You can also chat while you're there. A very sociable thing, Yeah. And of course, then the slop bucket has to be emptied that night when everyone's gone to sleep. So whenever I would call for the volunteers for the slop buckets, it's amazing how people found other things to do. It's all part of camp life. It's things you just remember with some fondness eventually. By the way, this, that is an ADRA well. This is the work that ADRA does around the world. They put in well points, which give to the local inhabitants an opportunity to get that water up from deep down. Not superficial water, but from deep down. Even though that water is coming from deep down, we still have to take purification tablets, the same purification tablets that are advised for use by the United Nations, the WHO, the World Health Organization, and we have to put those into big plastic containers, let them stand for so many minutes, before we can use them. It does mean that the water gets a little bit of a different taste, but it's better than getting dysentery or something else, So, chances to witness. They speak Portuguese, we speak English. How do we witness? Well, you know what? Song is a universal language. And there's some of our group busy singing to the church that we went to, next to which we put up another church because they'd grown so rapidly. They were going to use this for the children, and the new church was going for the adults. And then you could go out into the villages and we would take the Sabbath and go out into the villages, and you can see the pastor. He's got his Bible there, and we've sung, the crowd has come, and he's going to give them a message. And funny enough, you can sometimes not move young people to go out and witness with a crowbar. But you take them to a place like this, and you get that romantic atmosphere that's different and all the rest of it, and they're together, and they end up singing until the darkness settles. They still have to find their way home, but that doesn't matter. They're enjoying themselves. They're having a great time. That's my son on the left there. Let me just get back there. On the left, he's a intensive care nurse in South Africa. He's a little bit older now than he was there, but the method. What Maranatha did was they looked for vehicles that they could use that would be able to handle the Mozambican conditions. And they found second-hand, surplus, South African Army trucks. These trucks have got rotary engines that do not require water. And they are fantastic. They're 5-ton trucks. And on a truck like that, they can put 4 churches. Okay? And they named these trucks, they painted them, took off the military green, and they painted them all white. And the first lot were Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But I can assure you that that didn't stop people being frightened when they saw coming through the bush suddenly an ex-military truck like that. And even though it has a cross on it, Seventh-day Adventists on it, and Matthew on it, it still made them tremble, But of course, as time went by, they got used to it. And there is the church. That is a one-day church lying there. Okay? And these are the tools that you need for a one-day church, plus a generator. So each church that has been put up, and sometimes we were doing 4 in different places on one day, would have to have 4 generators and that equipment in order to put that church up. Okay? Normally there'd be 3 drills for each, and there'd be clamps and all these other things, and the mallets and so forth. And here the young lady is busy measuring out and getting everything into its pairs and sections and so forth, so that we can just take them and put them in place. Now, how does it happen? First of all, you build it on the ground like that. You drill the hole and you put your screws through. These were nuts and bolts, right? You have to be so careful because that is so sharp. We had on the very first day of building one-day churches, 3 individuals who cut themselves and had to have stitches. That particular day, my son was the last one to cut himself. Quite severely, he slit himself across here, and he needed about 8 stitches across the knuckles. And at that point, the nurse who was busy doing the stitching for him, he could have done it for himself, I suppose, but that's a bit difficult. This person had got down to the last little bit of local anesthetic. And they had to make a decision. Do we keep 1 ampule over in case there's something really bad that happens? Or do we... So my son said, go on, do it. And he went cold turkey on it. And I can assure you, watching your son having his hand stitched, cold turkey, no painkillers, not even a dram of whiskey, like they did in the old days, it's quite something. And these young people are tough. They really were tough. I take my hat off to them. So there they are, putting those stakes into the ground. And the way they do it, I'll show you in a moment. You see these yellow hammers there on the ground. Those are special hammers that they have that they actually take and bang these stakes with, drive them into the ground. There's no foundation. There's no foundation here. There they are. They've loaded this thing in place. You can see the actual stamp, the thing that goes on top of the vertical piece of building material, that channel. And then fellows like this, and this is a big guy. Brother, he's a bit bigger than you. Not so much that way, but, you know, watch this. Bang, the first bang, right? Bang, the second bang. And it's in, right? And then we had to, from that point, then take all these sections that we'd made and add them on bit by bit, make sure everything was square and so forth. And then on top of that, the sheets go on to give structure, the structure rigidity. And it is here on the roof that my son was putting the capping on when his hand slipped and went into that capping at the top. Of course, there have to be some generals around, you know, the army. And there we were, Egregia Adventista de Septima Dia. That is now after the Americans got it right, okay? They got it right. That church went up in one morning, finished in one morning. And there's the team that did it. That's the team that did it. Challenges? Yes, lots of challenges. You have to take everything, right? Your tools, your generators, your water containers, everything you have to take. Your food, except if you're lucky, you can buy some local Portuguese bread, which is pau, they call it, huh? Yeah. But the second day, you know, Portuguese bread it's not meant to be eaten one day later. It's meant to be eaten the day, because then it's at its best. So we had to go searching for little bakeries and little villages and towns and so forth. But other than that, most of the stuff we had to take with us. We had to have trailers like this. And in all the time that we were traveling, only twice am I aware of, in about building 30 churches, that we ever had punctures. I had a puncture in my trailer, and one of the 4x4s got a puncture. Now, in the back there, you see behind the group, you'll see there's another vehicle there. It's a pickup with a canopy on it. That pickup was hit by a truck that couldn't brake in the center of one of the towns on our way, the very first day, on our way to set up camp. It was hit in the front, the truck was disabled, right? The canopy was shifted. There were 7 young people in the back, 2 in the front, and nobody was hurt. Absolutely amazing. The truck had no brakes whatsoever. That's one of the challenges, right? That cost me spending 24 hours at the police station in this town, trying my best to avoid a huge fine that they wanted to give us for being in the right. It works differently in some parts of the world. We weren't the ones that hit. We didn't have the failed brakes, but, you know, we probably didn't speak the language well enough to know what was going on. And it cost us 24 hours of negotiation and so forth to eventually get cleared. And of course, one of the other big challenges is the fact that it's very tiring work, as you can see, really. And that's a strapping big guy, but he was really tired after a day's work. The other thing that you have is malaria. That young lady there, her name is Anka, nearly lost her life. On our last trip, she was perhaps a little bit too careless about watching her symptoms. You have to watch very carefully. If you're not taking the prophylaxis, which is advised in some instances not to take anything to prevent, because it masks the symptoms, and you don't really then know quite what's happening to you, okay? She didn't pick up on the symptoms. It's like flu-like symptoms. And she left it too late. And she got into full-blooded malaria, and she was in intensive care, and we just the grace of God, she was safe. She may not return to a malaria-infested area ever. That's how bad her situation became. So that is one of your challenges. Another challenge, these things. These are harvester spiders, and they harvest at night. So you won't see them during the daytime. But the moment you set up your campfire and you stretch out your feet after having a shower, and you've got your slip-slops or your, what do you call these, sandals on, right? Suddenly, the world around you, around the campfire, becomes alive with these things. And they run on their legs extended like this. They go backwards and forwards between the chairs and stools and so forth around the campfire. And they are actually absolutely horrifying to have around. They are not nice. They don't normally bite you or anything like that, but it's just the presence of these things and the speed with which they go around. And they seem to be unable to stay in a straight line, so that it can't be predicted. If you're walking along and you see him fixed in your torch beam, don't think he's coming straight. He's not going. He's going there and 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 back between your legs and out. You know, and of course this, the tick. And we had an experience. That's our family. Elise went on that particular trip, and all went well. And when we got back, it was near Christmas and so forth, and she felt funny. She had a headache. She had what appeared to be a bite and a swelling, and we thought immediately spider. Went along, they misdiagnosed situation. The headache got worse. It was really miserable for her. Christmas Day, was it New Year's Day? That you eventually had to be taken to the hospital? Old Year's Eve. Had to take her to the hospital. She was really in a bad way. And they looked at her and they patched her up, and then, or they patched her up a day or so before that, given her some tablets. And it got so bad we had to take her back again, and the result was this. One of the nurses diagnosed that she had tick bite fever. And there is no way that you can get by tick bite fever unless you take the prescribed medication. You'll be sick for 6 months. You'll have a headache for 6 months. It's really a bad situation. So that's another of the challenges. Rewarding, absolutely rewarding. To sit around a campfire with a bunch of young people and some oldies too, and just enjoy that afterglow as you chat about what happened, tell stories and so forth. That young man that you see, that young lady that's standing third from the left, that young lady I took to a church building site, left her and 2 other people there, told them to get on with laying out the thing, and she had a call of nature, and so she went to one of the local, and she had a little headlamp on to see what was going on, and she bent over to check, and whoops, there was a lovely glow in the bottom of that toilet for some time before the battery ran out. You know, the fellow here in the middle, right in the middle, was with her that day, and he got hungry because I didn't come on time with the food. And when I eventually arrived there, he had his machete. I don't know, he brought this machete along. He had this machete, and he said, Pastor, listen, I'm hungry. I said, no, I've got your food. Never mind, Pastor. They're selling goats over there. He said, can we go and get a goat? I feel like doing a barbecue. I said to him, now look, son, look. How do you expect to get this back to the camp? No, we'll put it in the back of your car. I said, look, pal, I paid a lot of money for that car. I'm not having a goat in the back of it, especially a goat that's probably got a runny tummy or something like that. There's no way. And I'm not having him on the top either. So we didn't. That goat survived, at least for a little while. So these are the interesting characters that you meet and things that happen. And then, of course, whenever you do something in Mozambique, it's going to attract some important person from somewhere. And this fellow here on the right is the fellow you saw with the knocking the poles in, right? He's huge. And here is a chief of one of the surrounding groups who had come to see what we were doing there that day. And we welcomed him in, and I thought it was so nice that this gentle giant took him by the shoulders and pulled him over there, and the two of them stood there for a picture, you know, for the picture of the day. And you build relationships with the folks. It's actually beautiful to see. The children loved having us there. They just had so much fun. Had to keep them away from the building, but they had a lot of fun. And, of course, this fellow is a future Einstein. This young fellow had built himself a radio out there in the bush with almost nothing at his disposal. He had created a radio. And he was so proud to walk around among us playing his radio. He was a future Einstein, really. And of course, you get people like this. He gets around by dragging himself wherever he goes. And he asked that day whether he could come and help build the church. And of course, the first reaction is health and safety, no. I mean, what would happen if something was falling? He'd never get out the way in time, right? Said, no, guys, let him have his day. And that day, this man helped to build the church. We could have done without him, but you know what? It was a joy to his soul to be there that day. And when we said goodbye, you can just see the happiness and the joy and the fact that he had participated in the big real world and done something that he could otherwise not have dreamed of doing. So, you then find the oldest man in our group. This man at that time was into retirement. He was an auditor for the SID in South Africa. And he came and said to me with tears in his eyes, he said, this is the best experience I've had in my 40 years as a church employee. With tears coming down his cheeks. And I thought, you know, this is what volunteering is all about. It's bursting the boundaries, going outside the envelope, doing things that really are different, and it's a wonderful experience. All because we believe in this. And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. So, of all the things that I've done in my ministry, you wanted something personal? This was the best. 5 years of building churches. That was my night job, by the way, not my day job. We did this after hours, as it were, on weekends, and one holiday week a year and one of my normal working weeks I devoted to this. We covered all our expenses. We never came out short. We didn't lose any lives. Came close. Never lost any lives. And we had a wonderful time. And it's brilliant to see how many of those young people are still in the church. When they put those big things down into the ground to hold those churches up, they also put their own roots down into the church to stay. Okay, any questions before we close off? No test, by the way. I'm not going to test you on it. I think those churches cost about $1,000 each. Okay? Maybe a little more for some of the roofing sheets, but that was it. So actually, they put up 1,000 of those churches, I think, in Mozambique. 1,000 of them. Plus something like 200 or 300 block churches that were totally and absolutely earthquake-proof, built on a floating foundation about that thick, concrete foundation, and made of bricks that are formed using the tiniest bit of cement, ordinary river sand, and water, and compressed in a special compressor to become very compact and then allowed to dry, and then they were stacked. They weren't cemented in. There was no concrete used there. They were just stacked one on top of the other. because they had a groove down the center and a little thing up at the top, a flange, so that the one fitted on the other, and they just fitted on like it. Brilliant. But anyway, right. So I'm saying that there are no questions. Is that right? In Mozambique, at the time that this was being done, it was about 160,000. I think it is now well up to the 250,000. Okay, the growth is very fast. There are over 1 million Adventists in Zambia. Yeah, every person number 19 that you bump into in Zambia will be statistically a Seventh-day Adventist. Staggering, isn't it? Zimbabwe probably must be about 1 million now. Okay, and they have much smaller populations than the UK. Malawi has, I think, about 400,000. So, how much? Is it now 900,000? 5 years, eh? That's when I was last there. Sorry, no, it's not. It's longer. It's 7. Right. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Excuse me. You said 160,000 at membership at the time.
Yes, I think it was around about that.
How can we do that in Great Britain?
Well, I tell you what, we all have to become poor, considerably poorer. We have to take away television, except for the very wealthy. We have to eat pretty simple diets. We have to work a lot harder. We have to trust in God because we won't have insurances, things like that. That's the reality of it. Those people live by faith. They live by faith.
I mean, we see a report in was it Rwanda just baptised 100,000 or something, or more than that, whatever it was. And you look at the 30-something thousand in Great Britain and want to cry.
Yeah, there is one little thing that you have to realise, and that is that HIV/AIDS made a lot of people very frightened. And it meant that for many people, the last resort was God. And they flocked to the church. Many of the people that you were baptizing would have been HIV positive. Okay. So that's a factor to consider. Another thing is this, that people have a much bigger sense of community. I think, my brother, you will agree with me, there's a much bigger sense of community, Ubuntu, in places like Malawi and so forth. So if something's happening, the community come out. They come out to see it. You know, they're going to sit there, they're going to be participating. People are more open to expressing themselves and coming forward and standing up and, you know, doing things that are obvious indications of giving your life to God. We are very stoical, you know. Nothing moves us. And then I must also say that in some instances we were baptizing too quickly. Too many people too quickly. So you have to compare that with some of the losses, you know, the people who fall out. So it's not quite maybe as it looks, but they definitely are more accepting of Christianity. And it's true to say that Africans as a whole are religious. Whether they are animist, whether they are tribalists, whether they are whatever, religion means you don't get atheists in Africa, really, do you? Have you met many atheists in Malawi?
Well, you may not call them atheists as such, but there are people who are, what do we call them? People who believe in spirits and ancestors. And
yes, the ones who wear the big hat and run around naked under the hat.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they are not atheists as such,
Yeah.
they
No, they won't have Christian, but they still have a religion.
There's an element of religion.
Yeah,
Like
that's right.
engraved,
That's right. It is.
So, if you like.
So that's the difference about Africa and many other places too. People are by nature religious. We are by nature here, by default, more and more agnostic, atheist, humanist, Some of that we need to thank the European Union for and its laws, which don't necessarily foster religious belief, Anyway, I think that's enough.
Is the building project happening every year?
It's finished. It's finished. They moved from there to Zimbabwe, to Malawi. They built some churches in Malawi, moved from there to Zambia to build some schools, and they built some churches in Zimbabwe. And when in 2008, 2009, we had the big collapse, a lot of the donors were unable to give the large amounts that they were giving previously, and Maranatha fell on hard times, and now they have cut back their program a lot. Okay, they're not doing the same amount of outreach work in Africa as they did. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Good. Yes.
It's a very good program that you had in place. It's a shame that it's not rolling at the moment. Is there any maybe a chance of the church trying to revive such programs to not only Africa but some other places where they will appreciate much?
There are some individual churches in this country who are finding projects to work on. Some of the churches go to Romania to do the rehabilitation of schools and things like that. We get these reports from time to time and we publish them in Messenger. There is ADRA, and ADRA is busy doing things like the Cambodia trip and things like that, and so forth. But as far as church building programs, you can imagine that you need a huge infrastructure to be able to run those trucks. Okay, they built themselves trailers that were attached to the trucks that took an extra 4 churches with their sheet metal. So when that truck went from place to place, it would drop your churches off in piles the day before you arrived. They dropped 8 churches or 16 churches, and that requires drivers, that requires people actually counting out all the material, making sure it's packed and ready and so forth, And then there are other things that are required as well. They've got to go and find these sites, they've got to demarcate the sites, they've got to do a lot of administrative work. The bringing in of hundreds of churches, the clearing of the churches through the port authorities and things like that. It requires a lot of quite large infrastructure, and the bringing in of these things en masse. To bring in 1 or 2 or 3 is just not feasible. Then on the other side, you've got to get, in South Africa for instance, we had to get people together who were willing to go, who had the time to go, who had the vehicles to go, because you need 4x4s, okay? You had to raise the money. Those people all paid to go. They didn't get paid to go. They were paying their own way. You had to organize. It's like the military. You actually have to have everything buttoned up, absolutely buttoned up. So that is not something that an individual church can do. It required Maranatha Flights International to be the one to organize this, And in closing, let me say this. We had, after this incident where this big truck smashed our one vehicle, we had to extricate those people. After we finished working there for a week, we had to extricate all those people that were once in that truck, put them in the other vehicles. We had to take all the equipment that was in that vehicle, plus the trailer that it was pulling, and put it into our vehicles now. We had to take that vehicle, because there's no way that we could have done an insurance claim in Mozambique. We had to get it back to where it was insured in South Africa. So we had to put that vehicle on the back of Matthew, right? Have you ever tried to do that in the bush? It was something to behold. We got it on top of Matthew. We took Matthew's trailer, which was a 6-foot trailer, and put it on the back as well, and we took it out of the country. So it was, the American military want to go to Iraq again, this time to do something good, they must call us. We'll help them. It requires so much, a lot of logistics. So it's beyond the average church, But that doesn't stop you doing something. Doesn't stop you. Right. Yes, one last question from the back.
What you say one church is a customer 1,000 pounds?
When we were, yeah.
How many pushed one school?
Same.
Simple.
Yeah. What they did is they worked out, based on the size of the church, they worked out that they could also have a classroom that size. But what they did in that classroom is that they took one portion of the classroom and turned it into a teacher's office. So instead of having the church, you would have the church with slightly different windows, and in the back half would be the teacher's storeroom and the teacher's office. So that you could have a one classroom school, or you could have a one classroom school and you could then take a church and have an extra classroom, and another church and have an extra classroom. So that's how they did the schools. But basically, I think it was more or less the same cost. And at that time, I think it was about $1,000 for the material, except for, I think that included the roofing sheets. Now, of course, things have changed. Yeah. So you could put up a school, and then you could take, or the school classroom with a teacher's office and storeroom, and then you could add to that 2 or 3 church structures, and that would give you the other classrooms. Okay. Right, we're going to say a prayer and close off. And seeing that you come from Malawi, my brother, you are going to be given the job of saying a prayer, okay, for all those churches that were built. Okay.
Shall we pray?
Sorry.
Let us pray. Our kind and loving Father, we thank you so much, Lord, for the Sabbath day that you blessed us with. Lord, thank you because you are in charge and you are in control of the events happening in this world. Thank you, Lord, that you have given us a task to work in your vineyard. And we thank you, Lord, for the program that we have just had. We have heard about the building of churches in Mozambique. Lord, what your servant has shared with us, let it be, bring some enthusiasm in us so that we can also work in the communities where you have blessed us for the betterment of your kingdom. Lord, we may not be able to build churches here, but help us to speak life into people that we bump into, so that one day, Lord, we should be found in your kingdom. So, for those who are working tirelessly, building structures, physical structures for people to congregate and worship your name, Lord, may you bless them abundantly. Help in all such endeavors. As we part, Lord, we pray that your Holy Spirit go with us. Bless us as a church, and bless each one of us in areas that we need you more. For we ask and leave all this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Pastor.